welcome to Convicted Hearts. I'm Jen, your host, and today I have the honor and privilege of being here with Bernadette. You guys are really going to be fascinated with her story, and you're going to be inspired. So welcome, Bernadette. How are you today?
I'm good, Jen. How are you?
I'm pretty good, pretty good. Glad to be sitting here with you today. After our little chat the other day, I was like, this is a story people have to hear.
Yeah, it was kind of crazy because I felt so comfortable just talking to you.
Yeah, so did I. I'm so glad that you did, because that's kind of what it's about, just telling what you've been through, what you go through, and I feel like it inspires people that might be struggling. So
Right.
that's yeah. We'll just start out like, where did you grow up? A little bit about your history.
Okay, well, I was born and raised in Boa Heights General
Okay.
Hospital. Um, I was brought up with my grandmother and my grandfather. Both of them are my dad's parents.
Okay.
Um, my mom and dad were never around. Both addicted to, one was addicted to crack cocaine, and the other one was addicted to cocaine.
Okay.
So I never had neither one of them. My grandparents raised me since I was 3 months old.
Wow, just a baby, newborn. Yeah. Wow. Now, were you like the only? Did it feel like you were the only child, or were there other children in the home with you?
No, well, I was the only child.
Hmm.
Um, I had two boy cousins that I was always around because their
Hmm.
mom and dad would go to work 9 to 5, so my grandmother would watch them.
Got
So
it.
I was with them just from the hours of school hours, and then that's it.
Okay. So grandma and grandpa were like parents basically to you.
Yes, my mom
Yeah.
and my dad.
So growing up, did you feel like it was a pretty typical or normal upbringing? Did you know that your parents were out there like doing their thing as you got a little older?
So my father was in the household,
Okay.
and it wasn't up until maybe the 6th grade was when I fully understood that my dad wasn't just sick, he was addicted to drugs.
Okay.
And the only reason why I figured that out was because our school offered DARE, the DARE program.
Oh, I remember
And
that.
that's how I found out. Yeah, that's how I found out about drugs. So I was putting two and two together. So I was like, my
Mhm.
my dad does this stuff, that it's bad. So,
Yeah.
but other than that, I did have a normal upbringing. My
Mhm.
grandparents put me through Catholic school. I played sports since I was 6 years old. So
Great.
I had a really good upbringing.
Good. Yeah. Around, so you lived in the same neighborhood until when did you start maybe getting into a little trouble or having a hard time?
Well, I was always curious about that life,
Hmm.
like the gang life, being in the streets, hanging with the homies, stuff like
Hmm.
that. Since I was young, because the school that I went to was right across the street from the Ramona Projects,
Oh, okay.
so which is also known as the Big Hazard Project. So,
Hmm.
I seen all the gang activity. I seen, all the homies kicking it, and just laughing and having fun, not a care in the world. So I was curious growing up.
Hmm.
However, I was very sheltered at the same time, so I wasn't able to go anywhere or go to sleepovers with my friends. I
Hmm.
was like confined to the house,
Yeah.
and at that time, I didn't really understand why.
Hmm.
Later on as I got older, my grandparents explained, you know, all the bad stuff that could happen at somebody else's house. So they
Yeah.
didn't want me going through that. So,
But
and
something
I'm
about
sorry.
that life kind of like draws you to it almost sometimes, don't you think? Like it can be alluring to you growing
Well,
up.
it was more of a sense of belonging. Um, I didn't know it at the time growing up that I didn't feel like I belonged. Like I didn't understand.
Hmm.
My grandparents raised me. Yes, I had a good upbringing. Yes, however, deep down inside, I was still feeling like if something was missing. And at a young age, I didn't understand that. So
Hmm.
when I figured it out, it was the void was my mom and my dad.
Yeah.
They weren't there, and I didn't understand. So I felt, even with my grandparents, that I
Hmm.
didn't belong. Even though they loved me and they wanted me, I still felt
Yeah.
like I didn't belong there. So I I started to hang out more as I got older, like about 16, 17 years old. I started to then venture off, and go out and hang out. And That's
Yeah.
when I found out, oh, this is what freedom is. So that's when I ran with it.
Yeah.
So around
Did you
15, 16.
okay. Did you feel like that sense of belonging when you first started hanging out and kicking it? Did you feel
Yes.
welcome? Yeah. I
Yes.
hear that from a lot of people I speak with, and it's true. Like you feel like, okay, this is what I'm looking for. At first, you feel like that welcoming, you know?
Yes.
Yeah.
So when I was growing up, I played baseball since, like I said, since I was 6 years old,
Yeah.
and I felt that's where I was supposed to be,
Mm-hmm.
in a positive area, and it was. But
Right.
once I started getting older and getting into high school,
Mm-hmm.
even though that playground and playing softball was my happy place, I
Mm-hmm.
started to venture off
Yeah.
because I was getting older. I was about to get out of high school, and that was in the past now. Now I needed to find somewhere else where I was going to belong,
Right. Okay. Got it.
you know.
Yeah, yeah. And what did that look like for you starting out when you did start to kick it and do like were you dabbling with any substances or, going out on any little missions?
So in the beginning, it was just partying. We were
Okay.
no, for me it was no drug activity at first,
Okay.
because I had always told myself I was never going to be like my parents.
Yeah.
So that kind of backfired, but so once I started partying and hanging out with my friends and the girls and stuff,
Mhm.
I noticed everybody else was doing drugs, and so now I have to even try a little harder to fit in because now I'm not doing what everybody else is doing. So once
Mhm.
again, I'm the outcast and I feel like I don't belong. So I need to do something to make myself belong there.
Right, right.
So therefore, that's why I started to use drugs. It
Okay.
wasn't because I'm sure also because I felt like I didn't belong. So
Yeah.
I needed to
Say
fit
like,
in. So,
or
and
is
that's
there a moment when you first started, hanging out and stuff that you maybe started getting into trouble and you thought, this this might be a bad thing, or did you just feel like freely like let's just do this, let me live my life?
so when I turned 18 years old, my
Hmm.
grandfather had said, when you turn 18, you're free to do whatever you want.
Hmm.
You're an adult now. Well, because I was so sheltered,
Hmm.
I took his words and I ran with it. So what I did was when after I started hanging out, say 15, 16 years old, then I started hanging out. Once I turned 18, I started hanging out more with the wrong crowd because I was introduced to them through the parties.
Yeah.
Then I started hanging out with the wrong crowd. Then we started doing, gang related activities.
Mhm.
My first mission, stuff like that. When I did my first mission, it was pretty much stealing a car. That was my
Okay.
first thing that I ever did.
Yeah.
And it was just the adrenaline that took over. And it was a sense of, you're not going to tell me what to do anymore. No one's
Hmm.
going to tell me what to do.
It
And
had to
I,
be
I
like
like that feeling.
freedom. Yeah, like a sense of
Yes.
freedom, right? A rush. Yeah.
Yes. And I love that freedom. I can go and come back whenever I please.
Hmm.
And my grandparents would open their doors. So I figured, oh, okay, well, I could still come in anyway.
Yeah.
And I'm not going to get in trouble and I feel free. So let's
Hmm.
just do this.
Right. So they were
So I
always
did.
there to embrace you still.
Yeah, it was a good thing and a bad thing.
Yeah.
You know, I will never talk down about my grandparents.
Right.
They did what they could. It was like I
Hmm.
said, and when we talked on the phone, it was my
Yeah.
decision, my choice.
Hmm.
However, it was a big thing about enabling me also. You
Oh,
know, and that's a big red flag for me. You know,
okay.
that I learned about while I was incarcerated, that I felt I was entitled because my
Mm,
grandparents gave me everything.
okay.
I didn't have to clean, cook, I didn't have to do nothing. My grandmother did everything and I still was rewarded for bad behavior, like, in the
Okay.
household. So I
Yeah.
was I was enabled. I wasn't shown responsibility at all.
Um, you mentioned, being incarcerated. So leading up to that, let's kind of talk about how you got there. Like what led up to your first incarceration, your arrest, or, you know, how did that night or day happen?
The time when I had caught my life sentence.
Yes.
Okay, so well, can I back up just a tad bit?
Yeah,
Okay.
you can definitely start where you feel comfortable.
So when I was 20 years old, I was
Mhm.
already very addicted to drugs. And one day I was just like, you know what? I'm gonna get away from here and I'm gonna go live with my mom because I need to stop using drugs. I'm this isn't what I'm supposed to do. This
Mhm.
this is not this is not how I want to see my life, right? So
Right.
I left to Las Vegas to live with my mom. Now, mind you, I've never lived with my mom a day in my life. Okay,
Mhm.
so I went to live with her, and we didn't really know each other too well. I knew she was my mom. I've gone out with her, stuff like that, but she didn't really know me like how my grandmother knew me,
Yeah.
So we were kind of bumping heads, but I was trying to make it work because I felt like, wow, I got my mom back. This is where I belong. So I'm going
Yeah.
to make it work.
Mhm.
Well, little did I know that my mom was still struggling as well in her addiction. So my mother had always been like a functioning addict.
Okay.
Well, I was per se, well, growing up, like she always held a job, always had a roof over her head, always had money in her pocket.
Mhm.
Um, However, she had a problem with men.
Yeah.
Okay, so at the time that I was living with my mom, she was living with her current boyfriend that she has now.
Mhm.
She was working at Suncoast Casino, and she was tested at work for a drug test, randomly tested, which came out 99.9% positive for cocaine. So she
Mm.
was fired on the spot, you know,
Yeah.
because you have to have a sheriff card out there to be in the casinos.
Oh,
So
okay.
so she comes home and she tells me, "Hey, Bernadette, I got fired today." She didn't tell me exactly why. She
Mhm.
said, "We have to move back down to LA." So we packed all this stuff. Um, and I was working two jobs out there. I was doing great. I was
Mhm.
clean. And we moved back down to LA, and my mom dropped me off at my grandparents.
Mm.
And now I'm 21 years old now. So I'm an adult. I know right from wrong. And my
Mhm.
emotion, I'm starting to really get to know my emotions, you know, and
Yeah.
my mom dropped me off and at my grandparents like if I was luggage.
Mm.
That's how I felt,
Yeah.
because she dropped me off and she left to my brothers, which me and my older brother literally grew up on the opposite end of the hill. There's like a
Oh.
hill that separates us.
Mhm.
And she went to stay with my brother, and a week later she went back to Vegas. So it was like it crushed me because
Yeah.
now here comes these emotions all over again. Like, my mom don't want me. I don't belong. Like, why I don't belong here? Why doesn't she want me? So I got into this, oh, woe is me, instead of being strong and fighting those
Mhm.
emotions. I backslid, and I said, well, she doesn't want me, then I don't care. Like, my own mom don't want me. Why would my grandma and grandpa want me? So, that was my excuse.
Yeah.
So I went out and I started to get high, and
Mhm.
it didn't stop. I never came back home. It was only to shower.
Mhm.
And then um I have an older sister, from my father's side. My dad has another kid with another woman.
Mhm.
And so we had kind of had a fallout, me and my sister.
Mhm.
And she had called the house and said that she needed a ride somewhere. So that's how we started talking again.
Okay.
From there, she introduced me to her boyfriend,
Mhm.
and they asked me if I would drive them because I had a license.
Mhm.
So I said, okay, I'll drive them. Well, the first time I ever drove them, it was to rob some guy. And at first, I didn't know what we were doing
Mhm.
until it had actually happened. And then it was already too late. I was already involved.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, you know, because I was already in that mentality, like with running with the homies and stuff like
Mhm.
that, I was like, well, you better pay me. If I'm going to do this for you, you better pay me. Like, I'm
Right.
not doing this for free.
Mhm.
So I guess he kind of liked how I had got aggressive with him, and I wasn't
Yeah.
gonna like back down. So he took to me. So he was always asking me, can you drive for me? Can you drive for me?
Mhm.
And that's where it started. That's where like
Yeah.
the hardcore, like
Mhm.
robbing people had
Really
started.
kicked in. Yeah. It makes sense. You know, your mom leaves again, you feel a sense of abandonment, and you just kind of went full-fledged into, I'm just going to live this life then.
Yes.
Yeah.
And then it made it even easier because my sister and I didn't grow up together as well. So
Mhm.
I longed for that sibling
Of course.
connection.
Yeah.
So my mom took off. I was like, all right, cool. You know, my sister comes back in my life. Okay, let me start to establish a relationship with her at whatever means
Yeah.
to
So it's
make,
almost
you know,
like it filled that void for a moment, you know?
yes, yes, it
Yeah.
did.
Okay. That makes sense. So you were with them, you know, doing these little things on and off. And do
Yes.
you feel like they just progressed and got more frequent?
They did. I went from driving to actually going inside the stores.
Mhm.
Um, I was asked one, I guess one of his co-defendants was able to make it. I was asked if I would go in the store.
Mhm.
Um, and of course I wasn't gonna say like no, like I didn't want to. I still wanted to be a part of.
Yeah,
So I
yeah.
said, yeah, hell yeah, I'm gonna do it. Hell yeah, I'm
Mhm.
gonna do it. And the first time I went in there, it was a wrap. I was hooked to the adrenaline. Um, I was hooked to the freedom. I was hooked to the power of
Mm,
instilling fear upon somebody else. That I
okay.
wasn't the only one that was gonna fear that, have that fear inside of me. Somebody else is gonna feel my fear.
Yeah, yeah. So it's kinda like bouncing that off of you onto someone else, right?
Yes.
Get it. Okay. Yeah. Now, were you ever, I'm just curious, were you ever scared going into this, or it was always like the adrenaline kicked in and it was just like on autopilot?
The first time I went, it actually went in to rob somebody. Yes, I was scared,
Mhm.
but then yes, the adrenaline kicked in, and
And it gets
it was like
addicting.
I would go numb, and plus I was on drugs, so
Yeah, so that kinda numbs your thinking anyways, right?
yes,
If you don't
definitely.
mind me asking, what was your drug of choice?
Crystal meth.
Okay. Yeah. You're doing these
Yeah.
things, you're going along, and when is like the first time you actually get arrested or get caught? Was that the,
It so we were doing a string of robberies
mhm,
from September of 2014 all the
mhm.
way until January of 2015.
Okay.
So my my crime happened December of
Mhm,
2014, and
mhm.
somebody was killed, and that still didn't stop me.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
And it
it
was going
continued
on for a while after that. You guys were still,
about a month
yeah,
after. Yes, I was on the run for about 2 months.
okay. So did you, I mean, I know word gets around, did you kind of feel like this is going to catch up to me? And did you kind of know that you were going to get arrested or somebody was going to talk or?
So when it happened, it was around Christmas time, and the very next day we were all over the news.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah, we came out on the 6 o'clock news, and
Mhm,
my grandmother called me,
mhm,
and she said, Bernadette, did you hear what happened in Whittier? And I said,
mhm,
nope. I don't know,
mhm.
what are you talking about? And she's all, they robbed and killed that man, and I could have swore it was you.
Oh,
And
man.
because mind you, my grandma's had me since I was 3 months old. She
Yeah,
knows my every move,
of course. Yeah.
so I denied it and denied it
Mhm.
and denied it and denied it until I was arrested in February of 2015.
Okay. So when that happened, was it kind of like everybody got arrested, or just one by one, or?
It was one by one because
Okay.
they were looking for two male suspects
Hmm.
from the heights of 5'9" to 6'2", and I'm nowhere around there.
Right. Okay.
I'm like 5'1",
Yeah, me too. 5'2", I say on some days. Right.
Right.
So you get arrested. Is this your first time going to jail?
No, so I've been arrested before.
Mm-hmm.
The first time I ever was arrested, I can't recall how old I was,
Mm-hmm.
but it was for embezzlement.
Okay. Okay.
And it was behind a rental car. It was a
Got it.
fraudulent case. And
Mm-hmm.
then I went to jail again for being under the influence.
Mm-hmm.
And then I went to jail again for a GTA.
Okay. So you kind of knew the process of, going to
Yes.
jail, but this is a much more serious charge this
Yes.
time. When you were being booked and everything, at what point did it set into you how serious this was? Did it take a while for you to maybe come down off of things, or did you realize right away, like, this is serious?
I knew it was serious, but I was still in that mentality that I did not care.
Yeah.
I had like um, at the moment when it happened, I did have slight remorse because
Hmm.
I did realize like this wasn't supposed to happen. I didn't go in there with the intentions to kill nobody.
Right.
You know, my intentions were to go and rob this place. Yes.
Hmm.
So yes, I did feel a little bit of remorse. I
Hmm.
knew it was serious. However, I was still numb to the situation. It wasn't until about a month in that I was incarcerated when my lawyer came and said that I was fighting the death penalty.
Wow.
Yeah.
Death penalty case, man, that would definitely make the reality set in.
Yes.
What was the jail that you were in?
When I first got incarcerated, I was at Twin Towers.
Okay, I've heard this, like a notorious spot, right? I hear about this
Yes.
jail, lots of stories.
It oh, I don't know if they still have the women there, maybe just one floor, but a majority of it when I was there, both towers were filled with women.
Being there, you had mentioned on our phone call how long you were there fighting your case. Can you go ahead and repeat that for the viewers, because that just
Yes.
took me back. Yeah.
So I was incarcerated at Twin Towers and Linwood
Mhm.
Central Regional Detention Center for a total of 9.5 years. I fought my case. It was going back and forth. I was going to court every month, every month, every month.
Man, that had to be wearing on your mental state. Like, I would think that would be so exhausting, you know?
So a lot of people have asked me like, how do you do it? Like,
Mhm.
I don't understand. Like I would have went crazy, you know.
Yeah.
And I said, well, this place is all I know. You know, this place is all I know right now. So I
Yeah.
have to make myself comfortable. I have to tell myself, this is where I'm gonna be. So you better
Mhm.
make yourself comfortable. You know,
Right.
if I worried about what was going on out there, knowing that I had no power or control, I would have drove myself crazy.
Yeah. Yeah.
You
So
know,
you really kind of put your mind in a state where, like, this is where I'm at. This is what I have to do to get through.
it is what it is. This is where I'm
Yeah.
gonna sit.
Yeah.
This is and sometimes I had to be real blunt with myself. Like this is where I'm gonna rot. I'm gonna rot in here. You know, and I had to be hard on myself like that because I couldn't I couldn't allow my mind to any weakness because I would have lost my I mean
Makes
it's
sense.
hard in there dealing with the officers in there,
Oh, I
dealing
can.
with the women. It was
Yeah.
just it's horrible.
Would you say, like, I've heard, from speaking with other women and other men that have been incarcerated too, I hear a lot of the women say that there's a lot of, like, bickering and, like, fighting and just craziness that goes on between the females. Did you experience that?
All the time.
Yeah.
They get mad at you if you don't give them hot water. They get mad at you if you don't want to share canteen. They
Mhm.
get like it's a lot of entitlement issues inside of jail.
Really?
Like they
Okay.
feel like they're entitled to everything.
Wow.
And
Yeah.
but yeah, there was a lot of bickering in there. I mean,
Yeah.
it's
It's
a bunch of women
I
having, you know, their moments every month.
Yes.
So
I can
it's
imagine. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah, I'm sure.
it's
It got
crazy.
crazy. So 9.5 years fighting your case. It comes
Yes,
down
ma'am.
to you being sentenced. And what is the verdict and the sentence you get?
So June 2017, I was
Mhm.
actually sentenced. They dropped the death penalty.
Mm.
I offered my DA 30 years without the L,
Okay.
and my DA said, no, I'm going to hang you. You're going to do, you deserve to get what you're going to get.
Mm-hmm.
So they didn't even offer that to me. So they said that the best thing they can offer me is 15 to life with the possibility of parole.
Okay.
And I still did not want to take that,
Yeah.
because my mentality was, I didn't kill nobody. I'm
Right.
going to win this trial because I only robbed this person. And that's what the jurors are going to see, not
Mm-hmm.
knowing the whole felony murder rule.
Yeah, the way that works with. Can you just explain for people that might watch and don't understand what the felony murder rule is and how that works?
So the felony murder rule is anytime you're in the commission of a felony
Mm-hmm.
and a murder happens, and even though you didn't do it, say you're involved in a robbery, like I was, and somebody got killed, just
Right.
because you were there, you're as guilty as the person that actually stabbed or shot that person.
Yeah. So you're charged just the same.
I was
As
charged with a first-degree murder. Yes.
yeah. Yeah. Okay. So you get your sentence, and where are you sent after that? Where do you go
Um,
next?
so I was still housed in 2017. I was still housed at Central Regional Detention Facility in Linwood.
Okay.
Um, so I had a lot of co-defendants, including
Mm-hmm.
my sister. My sister was
Oh.
my co-defendant as well. So we had to wait because my sister's boyfriend was fighting 2 murders.
Mm-hmm.
So the murder that I was on, and a
Mm-hmm.
murder that happened a month prior to the murder I was on.
Oh, okay.
So we had to wait until he was done with his first case in order to go anywhere.
Okay. So did they basically like put you guys on trial altogether?
No, we were all separated.
Okay. Got it.
Everybody played their own significant role in the
Mm-hmm.
in the
How they did it.
incident. Yeah, and so everybody took a deal except for him. He went to trial and was given the death penalty.
Wow. Okay.
Yes.
What
Yeah.
happens next? What significant?
So when I turned 25,
Mhm.
my grandmother, because my grandmother used to come see me faithfully every week.
Every
She
week.
made made friends with the guards.
Oh,
She brought them T-shirts because my grandfather used to work for the fire department.
okay.
So my grandma would bring them like LA Fire Department T-shirts and
Mhm.
stuff like that. So she made friends. She would come to see me every week, jump the line.
God bless her. Yeah.
And so it's this one, I mean, I had told you on the phone, like I've
Mhm.
seen my grandmother cry about the situation that I was in.
Mhm.
However, I had never seen my grandmother cry, and just the hurt and torment I was putting her through
Mhm.
that specific time. She had came to see me and she was just crying and crying. And I tell her, like, grandma, like, stop, like, it's okay, like, stop crying. And she's like, no, Bernadette, she goes, I just want you to live your life in here.
Mhm.
Like, just because you're in here doesn't mean that your life has stopped. Your life has not stopped. You get up and you breathe every morning. You're still alive. Don't act like you're already dead in here.
Mhm.
And at first I was like, what do you like? I am living in, like, like, I
Mhm.
said, I am living, I just don't care. Like, you
Mhm.
know, um, I'm fighting the death penalty. Like, I don't care. Like, they want to take my life. Like, I don't care. Like, I didn't care whether I had to fight a cop or another inmate. Like, I did not care. So she was like, please, like, take advantage of anything and everything that you have. Like, she was still trying to get through to me, even behind bars. So
Yeah.
because I seen my grandmother hurt the way she was hurting that specific day, it was like a light bulb went off in my head, and I was like, you know what? This lady's right. Like, how dare I treat her like this after all
Mhm.
she's done for me? Like, I need to figure something out. And don't get me wrong, it didn't happen overnight. You
Mhm.
know, I still struggled a lot because
Mhm.
the environment I was in,
Of
I still
course.
struggled. But I did go to school. I did learn how to use the computer in there. You know, I learned life skills,
Mhm.
and I learned, you know, to study for my GED to prep me for when I did go to prison. That's where I got my GED.
Yeah.
But after that, I was like, that's where my mission had started. Like, you know what? I need to give back now. Not. I know that it's supposed to be for yourself, but for me at that time, it was
Mhm.
for my grandma. I was doing it for my grandma.
Okay,
You
so
know,
that
so
visit had a major impact on you.
very major impact. Yes, yes,
Wow. I feel like, don't you feel it having someone that believes in you that much, and loves you, like, sometimes it just takes that one person that can get through to you.
yes,
Yeah.
definitely.
So you're taking all these classes, you're prepping to get your GED, and you're starting to try to live your life, like she said, right? Even in
Yes,
the worst circumstances.
oh, I was trying to change
Hmm.
just so she can be proud of something that I did. You know,
Yeah,
so that's where it started for me.
that's awesome. I'm glad. Grandmas are awesome. I feel like
Yeah,
they're
they are
angels on earth.
definitely.
Yeah, yeah.
So
So going from
they
there,
opened up a school module inside of CCD. I mean Central Linwood. Sorry,
okay, then
they opened up a school module, and I was still like dibbling and dabbling with getting in trouble a little bit, but
mhm,
there was this one deputy that was in there, and I'll never forget her.
mhm,
Um, she pulled me to the side and was like, because she used to call me pelona because I used to be bald,
mhm,
and she's like, "Come here, pelona, come here, like I want to talk to you." And I was like, "Okay, what's up, Ms. V?" Like, and she said, "I want you to come to the school module." And I said, "Dude, no way they're gonna let me in there. No way. Not
mhm.
me. They're not gonna let me in there. Not after all the ruckus I've caused in here. No way."
Yeah,
And she's like, "Don't worry about it. I'm gonna help you get in there." And she's all like, "Because I think it'll do you some good."
mhm,
And I said, "All right." Well, not that long after our conversation, I had landed up in high power, and then I went down to the hole, and then
mhm.
they didn't have nowhere to house me. I couldn't. They didn't. They didn't want. Nobody wanted me in their module.
Okay.
So she fought. That officer basically fought for me to get me into that module so that she can give me a chance, because people were learning a lot of good things in there, and I guess she's seen the potential that I had, because I was very respectful.
Yeah.
Because my grandmother had always told me, there's a time and place for everything,
Mhm.
and you give respect all the time, no matter who it is. I don't care, like, especially if it's authority or you're, an elder. You respect them, you respect their position, and that's it. You don't like it, too bad.
Yeah.
So she instilled that in me, regardless whether you were an officer, I was going to give you that
Mhm.
respect. So she pulled me into the school module, and I I'll never forget, like, I was able to get into classes, do things, and then I became a merit master. And in the county jail, a merit master is like one of the top inmates in there, I guess you can say.
Yeah. Is
Um,
that, like, basically sort of like a group leader, or how would you explain it?
yeah, so they trained me to be a facilitator in there.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so I had to take a life skills course, about 60 hours. I believe it was 60 hours of life skills courses. And then they kind of like graduate you into being a merit master, and then you get to go and facilitate to other floors in the facility.
Okay.
So I got there, and it just took off from there. It was like,
Mhm.
once again, there I feel that sense of power,
Yeah.
so,
Yeah.
but this time I was in a sense of power and doing something positive,
In a good way. Yeah.
and I liked it. So I was like, you know what, I can do this. Like, so I started to dive more and more into wanting to facilitate, and that's when I began to really tell my story to all the inmates. Like, and mind you, in the county jail, you're not really supposed to share your case because it's still ongoing.
Yeah.
But it was my truth. I knew what I was guilty of. I was owning that, you know, and whatever they were going to do with me, they were going to do with me. But I owned it, and I wanted to share with, especially the youngsters that came in. Like, they had no guidance at all. They just thought that it was cool to be
Right.
here. Like, and I would tell him, like, I don't even know when I'm going home. You know, you guys still have a chance, you know. And I would just speak my truth, and it went from there. And then that's it. It was my grandmother that changed my mentality, and that one officer that gave me that chance. And
Yeah.
I just took off from there.
That's
It was
awesome.
like,
Two people that impacted you so greatly, and then you're able to start paying it forward and speaking to the youngsters and other women that are going through it. And something that I really respect that you said right now, and I could tell when we talked, is that you owned what you did. You know,
yes,
you didn't make excuses. You didn't, you know, I could hear that in your voice. Even you owned it. How
yeah.
important do you think that is for
Oh,
someone to?
it's very important, because if you don't own up to what you did, you're
Mhm,
always going to be stuck. You're going to be stuck. You're always going to be blaming somebody else. Like, and that's where you place yourself in that victim role.
mhm,
You're not the victim, you know, you're the perpetrator.
yeah,
You were the one that did something to someone, you
mhm.
know. And if you don't understand that, like, you're really going to be stuck in that mental state where, you know,
Yeah.
oh, poor me all the time. It's not. You got to grow up and put your big girl pants on, because,
Mhm.
you know, you got to
That's
just
helped
own
you.
it.
Yeah, yeah, I'm sure that helps you to move forward and to start getting on with your life, however it's gonna go, you know?
It's
Um,
kind of like forgiveness for myself when I own it. You know,
you
like,
know what?
okay,
Yeah.
like, I forgive myself. So that's why I'm so easily able to speak about it, because,
Mhm.
you know, if you didn't forgive yourself, you wouldn't be able to really fully tell your truth.
You're right. You're right, because a lot of people I notice that don't wanna talk about, you know, and it's their right, that don't wanna talk about their life or share their story because they're still carrying that shame, you know?
Yes. And don't
Yeah.
get me wrong, I carried it for a long time, because
Sure. Yeah.
I was involved in somebody dying that was an innocent young man.
Mhm.
You know, it saddens me, because he he was just trying to do the right thing, you know,
Yeah.
working in community college. You know, he was a good solid dude, like,
Mhm.
and I was a part of taking his life in it.
Yeah.
It sucks, you know. It's something
I
I have to live with every day, you know.
I think that's also really important that you brought it up, like, and you basically you're saying, like you said, young man and what he was doing, he existed. I've had a lot of people in the past ask me, you know, about a guest, maybe like how have they made peace with their victim or with their, you know, and I think by, I mean, you can tell me, just speaking on them is sort of like acknowledging their life, right?
Definitely, he was somebody, you know. He was
Mhm.
somebody's son. He was somebody's brother.
Yeah.
You know, he was somebody's friend, colleague.
Mhm.
You know, you know, and I have to bring him up, because it's because also because of him that I wanted to change my life, you know, because I needed to give back to him and his family, and not
Yeah.
only just, you know, to make myself better, but I had a lot of I had a lot of asking for forgiveness,
Mhm.
you know. And it's I mean, it's a sad situation, you know. Like,
Sure.
if I could bring that man back, I promise you I would bring him back to his family,
Yeah,
you know. But I
of
mean,
course.
it's kind of hard, because when I talk about his name was Joseph.
Okay,
So when
Joseph.
I talk about Joseph, it was
Mhm.
like, when I was in my addiction, it was like I was watching myself as a sober Bernadette,
Mm.
because he was Asian, just like my mother. I'm half Thai. So he
Okay.
was Asian. He went to a Catholic school. He was brought up really well. He was
A lot of
going to
similarities.
college. He
Hmm.
he played sports, and it was like I just killed myself.
Wow, that is, yeah,
You
that's
see, you don't
such,
understand what I'm
yeah,
saying? Like,
like when you said that, I felt that. Yeah, it's almost like there were so many similarities between the two of you. It was that way. Yeah.
yes.
Wow. Yeah.
So it
Thank you
was
for
hard. It
sharing
was
that.
hard.
Yeah, that's important. I appreciate you sharing that because people do ask and they want to know. Um, After you're doing, the classes and things like that are going on, did you have any idea that you might have the chance of getting out? Were you hopeful?
I've always stayed hopeful. I don't know. Maybe it was. I don't know. I I was just, I guess, brought up that way to stay
Hmm.
hopeful about anything and everything that happens.
Yeah.
Like, be hopeful you're gonna win this game today, or be hopeful that
Yeah.
I don't. It was always instilled in me growing up just to be hopeful. I was a strong believer in my higher power. So I was born and raised into a Catholic church, so I was always told to have
Yeah.
faith, have faith, have faith all the
Hmm.
time. So I got comfortable, but I always had that feeling that I was gonna go home. However, I did have my days where I was like, I'm never gonna go home, like, and then you hear other people that are incarcerated like, oh, lifers never go home. I was had that thrown in my face before, like,
Mm.
oh, you're gonna be a lifer, like you'll never go home. Like, I don't even know, like, why are you even trying? Like, I have had people try to discourage me and tell me things like that,
Yeah.
and it's funny because the same people that have told me that are still going in back and forth to prison as we speak. So
See, that's a
it's like,
trip,
hey,
right? Yeah, it's
yeah,
always, inspiring to me for someone to stay hopeful, even despite what the circumstances are, because I'm sure, like you said, I'm sure there's bad days, but as long as you try and keep that hope inside you that something good
right.
can still happen.
Yeah, well, that whole main thing was when I was sentenced to. They offered me the 15 to life with the
Hmm.
ability deal. So the only reason why I did decide to take that deal was because of my grandfather.
Okay.
And I was on the phone with him at court, and I told him what they were offering, and he
Hmm.
said, "You need to take that deal, Bernadette." And I said, "No, I'm not taking that deal. I'm not taking a life sentence." And
Hmm.
he said, "Bernadette, what don't you understand? You need to take that deal." And I said, "No, Grandpa, like, I'm not." He goes, "Check this out. If you've never listened to me a day in your life, you better listen to me now." He said, "If you go to trial and you win and you
Hmm.
come home, hey, all right, cool, we're here. You go to trial after I told you to take this deal and you lose, you
Hmm.
can kiss me and your grandma goodbye. We will be dead to you. So no visits, no mail, no type of interaction, no nothing. You won't have nothing coming from me because I told you to take this deal." And I was crying. I was crying. I'll never
Yeah.
forget. It was like it was yesterday. And I told him, why you want me to take this deal so bad? I'll
Hmm.
go to prison for the rest of my life.
Hmm.
And he said, what you don't understand is that possibility of parole is your grandmother's hope of you coming home one day.
Wow.
And when he said that, I said, where do I sign? And that
Yeah.
was the reason why I took that deal, was because of him. If it wasn't because of him really laying it in and telling me exactly,
Yeah.
like,
This is how it's
that
gonna be.
poss
Yeah.
yeah, that possibility of parole is your grandmother's hope of me coming home one day. I was like, okay, fine, like,
Yeah.
whatever. I wasn't sad. I wasn't happy at the moment because of it.
Sure.
But I did listen, and I
Mhm.
thank God that I did, and I thank God that my grandfather did press me so hard
Mhm.
that day, because look at, I'm home now.
Yeah. Thank
So
God. Yeah. Yeah. I'm glad you listened to him. you
this
know?
time, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Right. Better late than never. Yeah.
Right. Oh man.
So how, like, what happens next as far as like, how do you end up getting out? Like, how did that come to be?
So I went to prison 2014.
Mhm.
It was June of 2014.
Okay.
I take that bus ride up there to Chowchilla,
Yeah.
and like I've heard some very scary stories and stuff
Mhm.
going to prison, you know, people getting stabbed and just crazy wild stuff. So I was already low key, I was like really scared, you
Yeah.
know, but I got over there and I was greeted like by everybody that, mind you, I was in the county for 9.5
Mhm.
years. So everybody that's in the county is going to state prison. So
You're
it
seeing
was like,
people.
yeah, so I'm seeing
Yeah.
familiar faces, and I'm being greeted.
Mhm.
I'm getting care packages from people, and I was like relieved. Okay,
Yeah.
I can do this.
Mhm.
But I had to stand my ground, and I had to keep reminding myself, like self-talking myself every day.
Mhm.
Find people that are going to help you get out of here. Don't run with the same crowd that you were running with in the streets. Don't. Stay
Mhm.
grounded. I had to keep telling myself, think of your grandma, think of your grandma, think of your grandma. You have to get home. I'm
Mhm.
trying to get home, you know. So as soon as I was able to get to the main yard to go to the library, I
Mhm.
was asking everybody, can you please show me what groups I can take as a lifer, please? Like I wanna take groups. And at first I didn't know what groups I was taking. I was just gonna take them because
Right.
board recommends you to take self-help groups.
Okay.
So I started taking every group you could think of,
Mhm.
beyond incarceration, generation to generation, AVP, the alternative to violence program. I took Bridges to Life. I went to Kairos. I did it all. I know I when I say I did it all, I did it all.
Yeah.
However, I didn't start really paying attention in the groups until
Mhm.
maybe a year after I was in prison,
Okay.
because I thought, okay, I'm just supposed to take these groups and show peace, like proof that I
Mm.
was going, like
Right.
actually not really working the
Mhm.
groups. So luckily for me, I met this woman who was a lifer as well, and her name
Mhm.
was Alice, and she was my facilitator for Celebrate Recovery.
Okay.
And she explained to me that I need to actually put work in these groups and
Mhm.
really like pay attention and listen to other people's stories, and how does that apply to my life, and how is it going to help me, you know. So I was like, okay, now let me try that. Okay,
Yeah.
so I was like, cool. So she started introducing me to more positive lifers, and it was just went from there. I just, you know, then I really began to learn about myself, and
Mhm.
I went to see my counselor when I first got there, and he was basically telling me like, you're going to board in like 3 years. Like, how the hell is that even possible? Because
Yeah.
mind you, I had just got there to prison, and usually you have
Yeah.
to be there like 15, 20 years before you even go to the board.
Right.
Because, you know, back in the day, no lifers were going home. None. There was a lifer, you hear a lifer and they're like, oh, this is their home. They're never
Yeah.
gonna go.
They chalk it up to literally what that word means, a lifer. Yeah.
Yes. So I was like, oh well, I have the possibility of going home, you know. So
Right.
I'm gonna hang on to that. You ain't just gonna
Mhm.
put that out on me.
Right.
So I started to like really get into these groups, and then I started really understanding what they were trying to teach me, and I was like, oh, now it was like one of those aha moments, like,
Okay.
oh, now I know why I was acting like that, or now I know why I behaved the way I behaved, and
Mhm.
how I learned how to lie.
Mhm.
I was like, wow. I was like blown away. I was so intrigued. Like, wow.
So you were really absorbing it and applying it to your own life, like all of these Wow.
Definitely. And what also helped me a lot was hearing everybody's stories and being
Mhm.
open to every. And what I mean by being open is because, you know, there's a lot of women in there that have child crimes,
Mm.
you know, and they're not too like liked in there back in the day
Yeah.
because it has to do with a child.
Yeah.
However, I wanted to understand why too, you know, like, but I was open to where I wasn't gonna I wasn't gonna
Mhm.
um close myself off to their story. I needed to hear it exactly everything, and
Okay.
maybe how they were feeling. I was feeling once upon a time or something. It's
Mhm.
just because I took somebody's baby. I took somebody's baby. He might have
That's a
not
good.
been a little child, but he
Yeah.
belonged to somebody. That was somebody's son. So
Yeah.
to me, uh, hey, I was a child case too. Then I guess you can say because he
Mhm.
belonged to somebody. That was somebody's baby,
Yeah.
you know. So I wanted to stay open and
Mhm.
really actually hear everybody's story, and that's what helped me a lot.
Mhm. Yeah, to understand. I can, you saying that, it makes sense. Like you wanted to understand how that happened or how did it get there?
Yes,
Why? Yeah, I can see that. Yeah.
yes.
Do you feel like if there were some of our sisters out there listening or brothers and they were in a position to be able to take some classes and apply these things to their life, how highly do you recommend doing that?
I highly recommend it.
Okay.
Highly recommend it. Even if they weren't incarcerated, if they had the access to it out here, I
Mhm.
recommend it out here too. Family members as well.
Okay.
Everybody needs everybody needs growth in their life.
Yeah.
Everybody.
Yeah.
And it's just a matter of having the accessibility to get that growth,
The
you know,
programs. Yeah.
because
I feel like
nobody
if we
really
had,
some
yeah, if we had that in our everyday lives, I feel like it could help prevent so many of us from getting into these situations. You know what? Like,
this world would be a lot more peaceful, I could tell you
right,
that.
right, totally, yeah. So going up to your you said your first board was like 3 years out. What is it like when you're approaching that date? Are you getting nervous?
It's nerve-wracking. It's
Okay.
nerve-wracking. It becomes a little stressful because you have to put this portfolio together, all your
Um,
chronos, everything you've done, stuff like that. Now, mind you, when I got arrested, it was also behind drugs. I was under the influence of methamphetamine.
right.
So yes, I did take NA classes. However, I did not study or know
Mhm.
anything about the 12-step program the first time I went to board.
Okay.
Um, and then when I got to board, I was I was a wreck. I
Really.
I mean, I went in there as myself, you know, and I spoke my truth, and you know, and I think because I think they seen the sincerity, that's
Yeah.
why they granted me parole 2018.
Okay. So on your first board hearing.
Yes, I was found suitable,
Okay.
and but a month later they vacated my sentence. And the reason why they vacated my sentence was
Mhm.
because they felt that I didn't have enough knowledge about my substance abuse.
Oh, okay. Okay.
So I was a wreck. I had to
Mm.
lock myself in the room, you know, because I was like, why did they vacate me? Like it was just horrible. It
That
was it
had
was
to
a it was
be
a bad yeah,
to like
it was a bad, but yeah, to get freedom and then take it
right.
away again.
Yes, that part. Yeah.
However, I put my self-help skills in order, and I was like, you know what? Okay, breathe. Just take a deep
Mhm.
breath first, and
Mhm.
then you need to think of the positive aspect of this.
Mhm.
Think back to where when you were sitting in that boardroom, and I had to look at myself in the mirror and tell myself, did you really think that you deserve to be found suitable?
Mhm.
And when I read the thing, it said because of lack of substance abuse. I was like, telling myself, like, I looked kind of crazy because I was like talking to myself in the mirror. Like, you don't even know your 12 steps, Bernadette. How did you think that you were going to get through this board hearing and not know your 12 steps and how to apply them to your life? So I was like, you know what? You're right. Like, okay, you're right.
Yeah.
Like, you're right.
It made sense when you, like you said, it might have looked crazy, but you made
Yeah.
sense of it, right? When you were able to talk to
Yes.
yourself. Yeah.
So that's when I was like, okay, calm down. This is okay. Now you're going to give yourself, because since they vacated my sentence, I had to wait a whole nother year to go back in front of board and do it all over again.
Okay.
So I was like, okay. So I told myself, all right, Bernadette, you have a year to learn these 12 steps and not just memorize them, but you have 12. I gave myself a goal, well, a time limit. Okay. You have 12 months to learn about the 12 steps and how to apply each and every step in the 12 steps to your life, and how are you going to use them in the free road. So when you can do that without like really thinking about it, then you're ready to go to board. Then you deserve it. But you don't deserve to go home if you're not going to learn about why you started using drugs in the first place.
So it's like putting the work in, right? To really,
okay. And then after that, we have a group called ALTOP in prison, where all the lifers go for self-help groups. Okay. And by the grace of God, it was right at the right moment. A friend of mine named Nikki Martinez, man, I give her like the highest medal for me, because really, she helped me so much in that classroom. Like, she broke me to the ground in a loving way, but broke me to the ground because she wanted me to work from the ground up. Yes. And oh my God, if it wasn't for her, the way she explained it to me, I would have never got the 12 steps and really understood them, because it's so confusing. Right. But she broke that, man. She's an angel in disguise too. She was a lifer as well, and is home. Is she okay? Now. Shout out to you, Nikki. Yes, Nikki Martinez. Thank you so much, because in ALTOP, if it wasn't for her in that substance abuse class, man, I would have never got it. I would have been like stagnant, because I was like, what the hell are these 12 steps, and what are they like? I've heard a lot of people say that same thing, like, it doesn't make any sense. I don't have to follow that. Like, it works for some people, not for me. But hearing you say that, I think it makes sense to apply it to your life and to really to study it. Yeah. She when we said no, we don't want to get up on the board, she was like, oh no, you're getting up on the board, whether it makes you feel uncomfortable or not. You're gonna get up there, because she wanted us to break through. You know? And don't you feel like we have to get uncomfortable in order to become comfortable with ourselves? That, like you said, she had to break you down in order to build you back up. Yeah. Yes, definitely. Yeah. And I'm grateful for that. Yes, that's awesome. So you go to board after the next board hearing, you go with these new skills in place. What happens then? Yes. So my second board hearing, my first board hearing, I had 2 men. So it was, I guess they said it was a little easier because the men are a little nicer. The second time I went to board, I had 2 women, and I believe it went a lot smoother than it did the first time. Okay. And when they asked me about my 12 steps, I was ready. Okay. I was ready. I was telling them what step is what, how do I can apply it to my life, how I'm going to use it in the free world. And the lady towards the end of my board hearing, she said, you're very charismatic, and I said, thank you. And she's all, it could be a good thing and it could be a bad thing. But she asked me, she goes, do you consider yourself a leader or a follower?
Mhm.
And I said, a leader. And she's all, well, you know, that could be a good thing and a bad thing as well. And I said, really? And she's all, well, weren't you the leader in your crime? Because I was the one that called the meeting together to go and commit this crime.
Right. Mhm.
So I was like, oh man, like she's in my head, I was like, she's
On the
trying to trip me
spot,
up.
yeah.
Like,
Mhm.
but so I told her, I said, you know what, ma'am? I said, I was a leader in a negative way. I said, however, I want to be a leader in a positive way today.
Mhm.
Today I want to do something different with my life. Today I want to help and I want to teach and
Yeah.
facilitate. I want to do something that I know that I'm capable of doing that I should have did years ago,
Mhm.
but I decided to make the wrong decisions. And
Yeah.
she was like, okay. Well, and then she read it and she said, Miss Corbera, we the board find you suitable for parole.
Wow.
And it was like a big wave. Like I knew it was gonna stick this time.
Yeah, because
It
you
was gonna
followed
stick
the
this
steps.
time.
Yeah, yeah.
Yes.
Wow. Oh, that had to be such a great feeling. Did you sit on that for a few days, or did you go back and call family and let everyone know?
I did let everybody know.
Mhm.
Um, but I did tell them, you know, the main decision comes from the governor. So
That's right.
yes, I was found suitable.
Mhm.
However, he can still reverse it. So let's wait on the governor and what he has to say first before we
Mhm.
even start celebrating.
Okay.
Let's be humble about the situation because if we get too
Yeah.
excited, things happen and
Yes. Oh,
I don't
yeah.
want
Don't
nothing
want-
to happen.
Right. Right. Exactly. So, about how long do you think before you were able to go home after you got that suitable?
So we usually have to wait um, about 2 to 3 months before the
Mhm.
governor actually accepts your suitability.
Okay.
However, at the time of my board hearing, I was in the process of going back down to LA County for court for the the law that passed for the 1437 on the felony murder rule.
Right.
And the 1437 is where they changed the law so that the person that was involved in, say, the robbery or the other felony other than
Mhm.
the murder, their their um their first degree murder or second degree murder sentence would be vacated off of their files.
Right.
So I had went down to court, back down to the county jail where I first started my sentence,
Mhm.
and I was released from there.
Wow.
So
Okay.
I did like a whole full circle. I started my time in that county jail and I ended my time in that county jail.
It sounds like a movie, you know? Like full circle for sure. You get home, do you go into like any kind of halfway house or program, or how does that work on getting out?
So I landed up getting out on a Friday.
Hmm.
It was June the 7th, 2019. And my grandfather had no idea that I was coming home.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh my
So mind
gosh.
you, I had already lost my grandmother. 2015, I lost my grandma.
I'm sorry.
Um,
Yeah.
so in that process of me coming home, I had to prepare myself that I was going to walk into this house and my grandmother wasn't going to be there. So this was
Mm,
one of my first challenges before because I did go to a program, but this
okay.
was one of my first challenges before I was coming home. I was going to walk into this kitchen that I've always seen this woman in, and I'm not going to see her there.
Yeah.
So my aunt came to pick me up and I'm processing all of this. I actually, when they called my name in the county jail and they said, Corvera, roll it up.
Mm,
And I was like, I never thought in the county jail that I was ever going to hear my last name and those words together in the same sentence.
yeah.
And it was a really an emotional day for me that day because I had went through a lot in that county jail, you know,
Hmm.
a lot of emotional up and downs concerning family and friends and just a lot of things.
Yeah.
So when they actually called my name and they took me down to the release tank, and they put me in that black paper suit because, mind you, all my stuff is in state prison.
Oh, okay,
And I
that's
was
right.
like, what is going on? Like, what,
Mhm.
you know? So I I had to ask the officer, like, uh, can I go out through those doors? You know, like, is it okay? You're not gonna chase me or nothing, like, you
Right,
know?
right.
And he looked at me like I was stupid, and he was like, just go through the door. And I was like, okay, you know, I didn't want to talk back. You know, I didn't want them taking me back
Right?
in that place at all.
Yeah.
So I was like, okay. So I walked through the door, and you know, my aunt lives in Claremont, and I'm all the way in
Mhm.
Linwood, so it's quite of a drive. But that hour that I sat out there, I was taking everything in: the air, the birds, the trees,
Mhm.
the cars, movement. I was taking, it was like an emotional overload for me when I sat out there.
Yeah.
And then my aunt showed up, and she gave me like the biggest hug, and she was like, "Are you ready? Are you ready to go home?" And I said, I've been ready 15 years
Yeah.
ago. I'm ready to
Yeah.
go home. You
Right?
know, so I went there, and I went to my grandfather's, and he's standing at the window, and he's looking like, later on I found out he was like, "What the hell is my daughter doing here?" Meaning my aunt that picked me up. He
Okay.
was like, "What is she doing here? Like, she did, oh God, here she comes. She's here. You know, like, why is she here?"
Yeah.
And then I got out of the car, and he looked like he's seen a ghost. He was standing at the window. He opened the window, and he was like, just staring, like.
Mhm.
And I said, like, "Hi, Grandpa, I'm home." And
Yeah.
he went straight to the door and was like, "Oh my God, like, you're," he was like touching me, and like, you know,
Yeah.
and I was like, I'm home. I told you I'm gonna come home. I told you."
Right. Yeah.
And then the first thing that, oh my God, that man, he said, "Weren't you happy you listened?"
Yes.
Yeah,
He
I
brought it
could have
up, right? He
choked
had
him.
to tell you.
Yeah, I could have choked him, you know?
Right?
I was like, oh my God, this crazy man. So
Aw.
I
Yeah.
got to spend the weekend with
Mhm.
my family because the parole office was already closed, and the
Mhm.
program, I couldn't start that Friday. I had to go in that Monday.
Okay.
So I what happened was, that Saturday I went. My grandfather took me shopping, and
Mhm.
I I was enjoying his company. You know, like, a little sad because my grandma wasn't there, but I was really really enjoying his company. And then Sunday came, and they took me to the mall, and I was just like, I need to go home. I don't want to be out here. I don't want to be out here. I don't want to be around all these people. I don't I'm feeling
That just hit you.
anxiety.
Mhm.
Yeah, so I was like, oh no, I need to go home, please. I can't.
Mhm.
I'm gonna freak out here. Like, just let me go
Yeah.
home, please. So we went back, and I spent, you know, my last days, like, with my grandfather, like, at his house until I had to go to the program. And there was a lot of things that I still had to work on in order to gain their trust, you know, because
Yeah.
they didn't know the new me coming home. They only knew the
Right.
person that went in.
Of
So I had
course.
a lot to prove, and you know, a lot of people say, "Oh, well, you don't have to prove nothing to nobody." Well, I did. I had to prove a
Yeah.
lot. You know, if I wanted my family back the way I had them before I started using drugs and getting crazy,
Mhm.
I had a lot to prove. So
Right.
I just kept that same energy that I had doing those groups and stuff, and I
Mhm.
brought it out here, and I still have that same energy,
That's
you
right.
know. And I went to this program called Crossroads in Claremont, and the lady, the director there, we kind of bumped heads in the beginning because
Mhm.
when I first got there, I was like, I want a job, I want to make money, I want to, you know, live life. I'm home, like, you know.
Yeah.
But little did I know, like, she said, you need to learn how to walk. I mean, crawl before you walk anywhere or run anywhere.
Yeah.
And at first I was like, what are you talking about? Like, don't make me feel like I'm still in prison.
Mhm.
You know, I didn't understand her concept, but later on inside the program, I started calling her my granny because she reminded me of my grandmother a
Mhm.
lot.
Yeah.
So now I'm starting to understand, like, Oh, you're teaching me how to save money. You're teaching me how to slowly interact with people out there in the society,
Right.
how to sit down and have an interview. Like,
Mm-hmm.
I get it. I get it. Now I
Yeah.
get it. Okay. This is why I need the program. And this is why I encourage a lot of people that are, whether they're short termers, long termers, to go to a program after you are incarcerated and
Okay.
never go straight home. Never go straight home.
I think
Because
that's good advice. Yeah.
because your family isn't on the same mentality that you are.
Mm-hmm.
They didn't get the same help that you did while you were incarcerated, so they're still the same people that you left behind.
Mm-hmm.
While you're changing incarcerated, they're still stagnant out here in the free road and still stuck in their stuck mentality.
Right. And they don't know
And
the
they're
full concept of what you've been through.
right. So
Yeah.
I highly recommend to go to a program for 6 months to a year
Mm-hmm.
and get on your feet on your own before coming home to family.
Okay. I
Yes,
think that's
definitely.
great advice. Yeah. Yeah. So you do the program. How long were you in this program?
For 6 months,
Okay.
I was in the
6
program, and then I went to stay at their alumni house
Mm-hmm.
in Pomona for 3 months.
Okay.
Yes.
And then you got a job how soon after?
I got a job within 3 months in the because you're allowed to work while you're in the program.
Okay. Okay.
I got a job with the DoubleTree Hilton through the connections of the director,
Mm-hmm.
and I became I was a houseman for the DoubleTree in Claremont. And then
Mm-hmm.
the pandemic, so I was there for about 8 9 months, or maybe a year. I was there,
Mm-hmm.
and that whole pandemic happened. Now
Yeah.
COVID is here, so we got laid off. Our hours were cut,
Mm-hmm.
so I started to collect unemployment,
Mm-hmm.
and then I sat at home for like a couple months, and I was like, I can't do this. I'm starting to get bored.
Yeah.
You know, I don't want to get bored because then I'm going to want to go out there in the streets and
Yes.
do
I'm
stupid
sure.
things or go back to my old ways. Like I don't
Mm-hmm.
want to do that. And then I
Right.
kept telling myself, I'm going to keep taking this government money for free. Like I want to work for my money.
Yeah.
So I was like, you know what? I'm just going to put in applications everywhere. I don't care where, everywhere. And
Okay.
I did.
That's great. Yeah. And then you end up getting an interview, and how did that go?
So I put in my application for Foothill Transit, and I went. I wasn't really thinking I was gonna be a bus driver.
Mm-hmm.
I did so I had told my partner, like, I want a job where I can drive. I just want to
Mm-hmm.
drive.
Yeah.
So a friend of mine used to work at it. Our company is in a within a company. So I work for Foothill Transit, but my company's name is Keolis America.
Okay.
So my friend worked for Keolis as a janitor, and she was like, "Hey," they used to call me Kicks. So
Mm-hmm.
she was like, "Hey, Kicks, like, you should come and sign up to be a bus driver." And I was like, "A bus driver? Like, how do I look driving a big old thing like that? Like, I'm
Yeah.
barely getting used to driving a car. Like,
Mhm.
you know, how the hell do I look?" And she told me, "You never know until you try it. Just try it."
Yeah.
So I was like, you know what? All right, I'm gonna try it. So
Mm-hmm.
I put the application for Keolis, and like I said, I had applications spread out everywhere, and they were the first ones to call me back. So
Okay.
they called me, and they set up an interview. I went in for an interview, and the first thing that man said was, "Why don't you have a work history?" And I was like, "Well,
Let me explain,
well,
right?
okay, yeah, let me tell you." So I said, "Look, sir," I said, "I don't want to waste your time, and I don't want to waste my time." I said, I've been away for a while. And he
Mm-hmm.
just basically said, like, "What do you mean by you've been away?" I said, well, I was incarcerated for 15 years.
Mm-hmm.
I said, I am currently on parole as we speak. And he's like, really? And I said, yes. And I go, I just, I put in applications because, I want a job. Like, I need a job really bad. And he's all like, okay. He goes, well, can you tell me a little bit of what happened?
Mm-hmm.
So I told him again, my story, the truth.
Yeah.
And he said, okay. He goes, you know what? He goes, I'm going to talk to my general manager.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I'm sorry. Let's rewind. He's all, so what are you looking for? And I said, I'm just looking for a chance, sir. I just want a chance to prove to myself, not to my family or my friends. This right here is to prove to myself that I can do this, that I'm
Right.
very capable of
Mm-hmm.
having other people's lives in my hands, basically.
Yeah.
And he said, okay. And that's when he said, I'm going to talk to my general manager and I'm going to talk to my HR. He goes, there's no guarantee that you're going to be a bus operator. He said,
Mm-hmm.
however, I'm going to see if I can get you inside the facility doing something else. And I said, okay. I said, perfect. That works for me. Like, any job is a good job. Like,
yeah.
I'm ready and willing to work. I don't, like, whatever it is.
Right.
They have me scrubbing toilets for all I care. I'm
Mm-hmm.
working hard for my money. Like,
That's
so
right.
an hour after my interview, he called me. I was sitting in a parking lot. As a matter of fact, I was waiting on one of my kids to come
Mm-hmm.
out of the store, and he called me. And he told me, he said, I have good news and I have bad news.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, well, just give me the bad news first. In my head,
Right.
I was like, great, I'm going to be scrubbing toilets, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, I would have been grateful, but I was like, damn, I'm going to be scrubbing
Right.
toilets. So I was like, that doesn't sound like a driving job to me.
Right.
So I was like, oh man, he's all, well, you have to come to work tomorrow. And I said, really? And he's like, yeah. I go, so well, what's the good news? He's like, the good news is you get to come to work tomorrow as a bus operator. You begin training this Friday.
Wow.
And I said, I didn't know. I was like lost for words. I was stuck. I had tears in my eyes. I was like, are you serious?
Mm-hmm.
And he's all, yes. And he goes, and I was actually quite shocked because my general manager said, I told him your story.
Mm-hmm.
I told him what you were looking for. And he said, you know what? Everybody deserves a second chance. Bring her on and let's see what she got.
That's right.
I've been with that company for going on 2 years now. I'm making wonderful money, and I work for the union, and I'm a teamster for the union. Yes, so
That's amazing.
God did that, and my grandma, and my
That's yeah.
grandpa.
That's all God, but yes, your grandparents too, looking over you. Yeah.
Yeah, because if it wasn't for them or my
Mhm.
always taking my thoughts back to them, like,
Yeah.
and then too, before my grandmother passed away, I promised her that I would never go back to that lifestyle,
Mm-hmm.
that life, the drugs, nothing.
Mm-hmm.
That I, I, for her to just kill me on the spot if I ever went back to that,
Yeah.
So, and that promise, like, it meant, I meant it. Like, I really
Mm-hmm.
meant it. I've
Yeah.
had some trials and tribulations
Of
even after
course.
my incarceration, and
Mm-hmm.
she's the first voice and words that come to my head, and it's the only thing that will ever calm me down.
Yeah. Sort of keeps you on
So
track. Yeah.
yes,
Congratulations on
awesome.
such a wonderful job. And I
Thank
just
you.
have to bring this up because you had mentioned a story, that you were able to sort of witness to or give a little testimony to someone that was on one of your bus routes, right? And
Oh yes, ma'am.
if you don't mind sharing that, I feel like that's a perfect example of God placing you somewhere in just the right time, you know?
Yeah, sure, no problem. I was actually doing the 291 route from Pomona to Laverne, and it
Mm-hmm.
was one of my last routes. I was at it's called a layover, where you park your bus and wait
Mm-hmm.
until you have to go in the opposite direction. And there was this young kid. He must have been maybe like 24, 25-ish, around there. And he looked, you know, like dirty and like he was homeless. So I had asked him, hey, like, what are you doing out here? You know, like, how are you? You okay? And he's like, yeah, I'm just trying to get back to LA, you know. He said, like, I'm homeless. And I said, well, dude, like, what are you doing all the way over here, like in Laverne? And he said, he was like, you know, I'm gonna be truthful. He's like, I come to the stores out here and I boost, meaning I steal from the stores, you know. And I asked him, do you do drugs? And he's all, I'm addicted to pills, to opiates. And I said, oh wow. And I go, so you boost to support your habit, basically, right? And he's like, excuse me. He's all, yes. He goes, I do. He's like, and I'm tired. He's like, I'm really tired. And I said, well, how do you do it? I asked him, and he's like, well, I have a knife on me, and you know, I take it in, and just in case if somebody messes with me, you know, I'll pull it out or whatever. And I said, oh wow. I said, well, have you ever thought about what are you gonna do, like if the security guard tries to stop you? And he's like, well, I'll just pull out my knife. And I said, okay, well, so what are you gonna do with your knife when you pull it out? Like I was having like a straight out conversation with him, like, and he was like, well, nothing. My intentions. And it was funny because he had said his intentions are not to hurt anybody. And it was like, neither were mine, you know. So I made sure to tell him, like, you know, I've been in your situation before where I was addicted to methamphetamine. And he looked at me like, really? And I said, yeah, once upon a time I was addicted to methamphetamine. I said, I actually just got out of prison 2 years ago. And he's like, what? And you have a driving job? And I said, yeah. I go, I was blessed. I said, but let me tell you, I said, I want to know, what are you going to do if you get into a scuffle with this security guard and you have this knife out and you accidentally stab this man or slice him and this man bleeds out and he dies? I said, did you ever think about that? I said, do you ever think, I go, you know what it's like to come down off of drugs, right? And he's all, yeah. He goes, it's not a really good feeling. And I said, well, put yourself in that position right now. You killed a man because you were trying to defend yourself, and you didn't actually mean to kill this man, but you were trying to like get away from the store because you just stole something from there, and you accidentally killed this man. I said, now you're wanted for murder and robbery. And then you have to go to jail and you're going to have to kick those drugs. I said, why would you place yourself in a situation like that? And you're just going to be like in your own living hell, like basically. I said, I never thought about this. Nobody ever came to me and told me, hey, did you ever think about what's going to happen when you get caught?
Right.
Because we don't ever think about that. When people say, think about the consequences, we don't really take that literally. Like we just,
Exactly.
it goes in one ear and out the other. But I
Yes.
told him, you need to really sit here and really think about what you're doing. I said, because your intentions may not be to go on there to hurt nobody, but accidents happen. I said, accidents happen. I said, what, you know, what are you going to do? Then you're looking at a life sentence and you'll never be able to do what you were actually capable to do out here in the world, you know?
Yeah.
And he's all like, man, you're right. Like, I never thought about that. And I said, and I could only speak this because I've been in your shoes. I've lived this. The only thing is that I chose to be homeless. I had a home to go to, but I chose to be homeless. I chose to run the streets. I chose to hang out with the wrong people. I chose to go to motel to motel to motel just so I can get high. I chose that. Everybody has a choice in life, you know? And he was like, man, I really, really never thought about that. So I gave him the ride and I took him down to the Pomona Transit Center where he has to catch the Silver Streak to go to Los Angeles. But before I could pull out of the driveway, he stopped me and he's all, hey, the next time you see me, I promise you I'm going to be sober. And I said, hey, don't try to convince me. I say, you do it for yourself. Just know that you have other people just like you out here trying to do better. I said, if they can do it, so can you.
That's
I said,
right.
so I said, if I see you the next time and you're sober, hey, congratulations. But if I see you again and you're still in the same position to where we were at, where I first met you, like, I'm not going to say, hey, like, I'm not going to belittle you. I'm just going to tell you, hey, you need to try a little harder.
Yeah.
Try a little harder. You know,
Right.
you got this. Just, I'm going to give you that positive motivation, because not every drug addict is going to be ready to stop drugs until they're ready to stop drugs.
Right.
It is what it is. Like, you're never going to get somebody to stop using unless they want it.
Till they're ready.
So,
yeah.
Yeah,
I just think that was a beautiful story to, I mean, it's not even a story, that's real life, that you were there in that moment, and he literally made a choice right then and there. Hey, you know, I'm going to do something else. And God willing, that's what he went ahead and did. And
yeah, I hope so.
It took your life skills that you learned, you know, your good heart, your good intentions, and, you know, to pay it forward. And I'm sure you're doing that to this day with people. So I just appreciate you taking the time out of your day. And I know it takes time away from your family to sit down and do this. So thank you to them too. Thank you guys. And
yeah, no worries. They get the life skills from me every day. So
I bet.
I gotta give back to other people, because I feel like a
Right.
broken record over here with these girls.
Right. Well, there's lots of us that could use them, the good life skills. So
yeah,
I appreciate
definitely.
it. And I just want to shout out to Karen for linking us up to chat, you know, and do this, because I just feel blessed to have you in my life now too. You know, I want to stay in touch for sure.
She's an amazing woman. I've seen her grow from prison all the way to out here. We were actually in the same program.
Were you okay?
She was actually my roommate, as a matter of fact.
God. Okay. What a treat.
She was actually my roommate.
It's a small world, huh?
Yeah, so I've seen that girl grow, like, and through her bad times and in her good times. And she's just, and what she's doing today, man, I gotta tip my hat to her, because she's doing amazing things, and I'm very proud of her, very, very proud of her. And I thank you, Karen, for introducing me to Jen. She's a blessing as well.
Oh, I know. I feel like we got our own little sisters group going now.
Definitely.
For sure. Thank you, Bernadette. I'm going to sign off right here. Just hang tight. For all of you guys that watch this, please remember to always keep your heart convicted. Thank you for watching.
Thank you.